Step now with former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Vinoo Varghese. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Let's just jump right in. How serious are these charges against Trump, his children, and the organization itself?
Well, they're not charges. These aren't criminal charges. These are civil causes of action that they've brought in civil court. So the interesting thing here, and ultimately, I enjoyed Letitia James's quote there. It's not the art of the deal; it's the art of the steal. I wonder, how long or who came up with that. It's catchy. The problem for her is that Donald Trump is Teflon Don. Nothing that's been put against him over the last several years has actually stuck. And it's a strange thing at this point to be saying they refer the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution, accusing him of violating federal criminal laws. The problem with that is normally the way these things work is that if there is a potential for a federal investigation, state and feds work this together and often have a joint prosecution, and some state official gets cross-designated as a federal prosecutor, and the case is brought there. That doesn't appear to have happened here. These are all civil allegations or causes of action and not criminal charges.
Yeah.
So are they serious? Sure, in terms of money, but not in terms of him at this point potentially going to jail.
Right. So good point, and you brought that up, that this is going to be something, though, that she's also asking federal investigators to take a look at. So ultimately, what would happen or could happen at the state level and then maybe separately in a federal investigation if it were to go that far?
So at the state level right now, she's using her broad authority in bringing this case in civil court. And what's called in New York is called Supreme Court, which just means felony trial. I'm sorry, it just means the trial court. It's not the highest court in New York. The question of whether the feds are going to investigate is a little bit, I would say it's unlikely at this point, because Mr. Trump, ex-former President Trump, has been under investigation, it seems, from the very beginning. And he wasn't impeached based upon what I believed was actual credible claims of obstruction of justice in the Mueller report. And then he survived being impeached twice. There are multiple criminal investigations going on. The Manhattan DA has been looking at him. The office has been looking at him for a couple of years now, even won a battle in the U.S. Supreme Court, but yet nothing has come of it. And that battle was over getting documents in which they had to give up. In the U.S. Supreme Court, with his Trump appointees, all agreed with the Manhattan DA that he should give up those documents, and yet no criminal indictment against Mr. Trump. Mm-hmm. There is an indictment against the organization, against his former accountant, but those are, for the most part, kind of weak charges, which can result in probation for someone like him. Here, the business of real estate and valuations is so tricky. Yeah. And it's going to be very difficult, even at the civil level, to show that this was a deliberate fraud.
So we know that there are all of these potential lawsuits floating around out there. Has anything about these allegations surprised you?
I think it's really, and again, I haven't finished reading it. I started, obviously it came out today, and I started looking at it, and I've started reading it, and it's puts forth allegations, and to be clear, it's a lower standard of proof in civil court than in criminal court. And so that's obviously something Attorney General James has in her favor. That being said, if you're going to take a shot like this, and remember, several years ago, her predecessor, Eric Schneiderman's office, had actually basically forced the Trump charity to close down because of problems with accounting and what they alleged was improper actions on the behalf of a charity. So her office, not her, has had luck against Trump in the past. But this is a much harder task, a taller order. And I think with the political climate, it's going to be difficult for her to actually win this case.
So, Vinoo, last question. If you were Trump's attorneys, what kind of advice would you give, and what kind of a defense would you mount?
Well, I think largely this is going to be fought in, it's going to be fought in court, and they're going to mount a vigorous defense, and they're going to move to dismiss most of these charges and probably move for, in what's called in civil terms, summary judgment for failure to state a claim or a proper claim, and saying that there's no basis, that there isn't even a minimal level of evidence for this to go forward. So I think that's where you start, and then continue the battle in the court of public opinion, which will have a big impact on this. That judge, whoever that judge is, this case is going to be assigned to, is going to feel the pressure or or want the potential fame of saying that he was part of taking Trump down. He's got to resist that, or she's got to resist that urge to fall into this and look at this from the facts. And I think these are clearly bold allegations, bold assertions, but until something happens, he's still Teflon Don.
All right. Thanks to former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Vinoo Varghese. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.